Hello, and welcome back to Kathy Houchins Stories. I'm Kathy Houchins, and I'm delighted you're here with me today. If you've been watching this series so far and you've watched the first 3 episodes and you liked what you watched, would you do me a favor and hit the like button and follow? And this way you won't miss anything that's coming up. I'd also appreciate any comments that you might have to say about the story so far, what you've learned, are there other questions you still have, and I'll see if I can address those for you. Okay, so let's get started. This is episode 4, and we're going to do a deeper dive into Eleanor's story. It's actually book 2 of the series, Sisterhood, Eleanor's Story, where secrets are buried so deep that they take everything you love with them. Now let's take a look at Eleanor's life. She's built an extraordinary life in this little small town of Houchins Bayou, Mississippi. Her dad is grooming her to be the CEO of the town's bank. Let me remind you, this is the only bank in town. However, she has had to fight through the good old boys network. And because she did that, she earned the respect in a man's world. Now to Eleanor, respect is everything. So her pillar is respect. There's a part in chapter 1 that I kind of really like, and I wanted to just bring that up and say that when Eleanor spoke, everyone sat up and listened. Now to Eleanor, that was respect, and it made her smile. And that truly is the kind of person she is. But her triumph wasn't all professional. During her college years, she took a spring break and went down to Florida. And that's where she met Blaine Burroughs, a Chicago Blackhawks hockey player, and his own past was really marked by tragedy. Here's a quick reading from chapter 1. And it said, while away at college, Eleanor had met the most incredible man, as she would always say in her perfect southern drawl. Well, that's not how she felt throughout their entire relationship. Blaine Burroughs was a hockey player who played for a team based in Chicago. They met while she was on spring break to Florida in her junior year, and from that moment on, they were inseparable. He would fly down from Chicago to see her at school whenever he wasn't playing a game, and once the tournament season was over, he found an apartment to rent to be close to her. Her parents were old-fashioned enough that there was no living together, so that was never an option for them. They were daily phone calls, quick weekend visits to catch up with one another, and yes, these two were falling madly in love with one another. It's an absolutely beautiful love story, and it goes on from there. Their fairy tale romance led to an absolutely beautiful sunset proposal in Hawaii, which was a present that Blaine had got for Eleanor. And the story keeps building. The first crack at the perfect world came without warning. Eleanor had flown to Chicago to watch Blaine play in a hockey game. And she was sitting there when she watched Blaine collapse on the ice. Let me read you to a section. This is the very first paragraph, actually, in chapter 2. Eleanor caught her breath when Blaine collapsed on the rink floor. He was unconscious, and his other teammates called for medical help immediately. The medical team jumped onto the ice and skated to his side within seconds. They began administering aid to him and called for a stretcher. Now, we all know that that's not a good sign. And it's always something that everyone is concerned, especially about hockey players. So what followed was a medical crisis that would change everything. Emergency surgery, uncertain recovery, and a diagnosis that would significantly change Blaine's life and Eleanor's. As Blaine fights to regain and rebuild his life, something else starts stirring. Everything seems destined to happily ever after, but in Eleanor's world, perfection comes with a price. Now, Blaine had worked so hard, and they brought him back to Houchins Bayou to recover. Mr. Beck set up a whole rehab section at the farmhouse, and he was set up pretty good with people coming, helping, and coaching and working with him. So they sat down together, Eleanor and Blaine, and decided that they would go on forward with the wedding. And so it was almost a perfect wedding right underneath that giant oak tree that was in the backyard out at the farm. And Blaine nearly had all of his hockey team present, including the coach. He couldn't believe they all came. And of course, Eleanor was surrounded by her three most loved and trusted sisters. Without giving too much away, but the things begin happening. There's a strange encounter at the wedding. A man in mysterious dark clothing who seemed to know more about her husband than she did. Mysterious phone calls started happening. Let me read to you part of chapter 3 so you'll understand. This is from Tom, Blaine's best friend's perspective. Tom and the other hockey team members present were all gathered at one table visiting Blaine and one another. Then a tall gentleman dressed in black approached the table. He asked if he could speak to Blaine privately, and Blaine suggested he take the handles of the wheelchair and roll him over to the side where they could chat a little more privately. Okay, side note here. Blaine was strong and was starting to get stronger, but he was not able to stand on his legs very long, so he needed the wheelchair to get around whenever that happened. So moving on to the rest of that paragraph, or the rest of that part of the story, Tom watched this man push Blaine over to another area outside the tent, but still under the shade of the large oak tree. It seemed to start out calm, and then for some reason the man leaned into Blaine and spoke very sternly to him. Tom stood up and decided he was heading over there when Tom stood up and headed, oh, for crimini's sake, I'm sorry. Let's continue here. Blaine said, and spoke to Blaine rather sternly. Tom stood up and was about to head over to where they were when Blaine put his hand up and said, "Stay." The man backed away and proceeded to roll Blaine back to the table. They shook hands and the mysterious man left. Now Tom recalled seeing this man approach and talk to David, who was Bella's husband, briefly, but never saw him at the reception again. So apologize for that little blurb there, but I am human, so occasionally that does happen. So anyway, you can see mysterious things are starting to happen. And here's a couple things for you to take note of when you're reading about it. The enforcer has made a public appearance. You don't know who that is yet, but you will. Eleanor had no idea that her perfect husband was carrying secrets that soon demanded payment in blood. For Eleanor Burroughs, beginning the perfect marriage with the perfect man she knew was built on a secret that would destroy her world. You have to read what plays out here. There's so much information in these next few chapters. I call it kind of the unraveling. Blaine goes back to Chicago to see his doctor and the team manager regarding his ability to play again. He'd worked so hard as a rehabilitation and was now walking again on his own and was pretty much self-sufficient. He had worked really hard at rehab and had pretty much felt pretty confident about his ability to play hockey. He had to make some last-minute decisions. Now, this section tells a great deal about the decisions and about what Blaine has to make to protect Ellen, keep Eleanor safe. This is a huge section of the story. Lots happens here, and I don't dare give away any information as you want to see. I want to see if you can figure out how things are going to be happening. Take a deep breath. Life is about to change for Eleanor. The phone call came at what should have been an ordinary day, but the words would shatter Eleanor's world forever. Let me explain by reading chapter 8 of what happens now. As you can see, I went from chapter 3 to chapter 8, so there's a lot of information in there. Mr. Bex began. Eleanor, this morning Blaine took a plane, flew Let me start that over again. Sorry. It's late and I'm sorry I'm screwing up here. Mr. Beck began. Eleanor, this morning, Blaine took a plane and flew to New York and was returning to St. Paul to see his father when he ran into a very powerful storm. The storm caused his plane to crash into the side of a mountain and to split in two and burst into flames. According to the investigators, there is no way anyone could have survived that crash. They have investigated and inspected the entire area and found no survivors. I'm sorry to tell you this, more than you know, but we have lost Blaine to a terrible, terrible accident. As you can imagine, Eleanor was devastated. Her sisters came running to her side immediately, trying to absorb with her everything that had happened. The family was struggling with it. The whole town of Hamps Bayou, the whole community, couldn't believe this had happening. And they all wondered how Eleanor was going to deal with such a terrible tragedy. After several weeks of the investigation, the investigators eventually closed the case as a weather-related accident. But questions still lingered. What was he doing in New York? And why did Eleanor feel like crucial pieces of the story were missing? Besides, what was Blaine doing flying a plane? The official investigation found one body reduced to ashes. They had no idea that they were only looking at half of the truth. Here are some questions that are listed in chapter 11. There are 2 people missing. One died in a crash. Blaine, maybe, who? Don't know. Did someone else die in the crash as well? They only found one body. Besides, where's Hector? You'll understand who Hector is when you read the story. And somewhere, dangerous people are asking deadly questions about a very serious amount of money that's gone missing. Okay, that puts you in that zone. Now let's go to the sisters. They're trying to help Eleanor get through this tragedy. Now I'm sure you realize that Eleanor wasn't going through this alone, and the 3 women she called sisters shared something that could not be explained by science, a connection that transcended the ordinary world. As Eleanor grieved, something extraordinary began to happen. All 4 women started experiencing the same mysterious visions, images that defied explanation. They called a gathering, and well, let me read an excerpt from that gathering. In Bella's book, you'll have learned about the gathering, and that's when the sisters come together to solve a problem. So in chapter 10, the opening ritual took place. They were all seated in their respective chairs, but just before they were seated, when they connected their hands together for the electrical charge between them, they all noticed that their headaches had disappeared. They'd been having headaches that you'll read about how that worked. Eleanor began the gathering by expressing why it was called. Normally, this would have been Eleanor's responsibility. She always called the reason for the meeting or the gathering, and she was unable to do it at this time and had turned the responsibility over to Bella. We're gathered here tonight to discuss the feelings we are experiencing due to the tremendous loss of Eleanor's Blaine. I know each of us has some kind of vision, or possibly several, that are unexplainable. Let's each take a turn to explain what we're experiencing, and then collectively, we will see if we can determine what is happening. Does everyone agree? Asked Bella, and of course they did. Now, I don't want to give too much away, but I want you to understand a couple of things, or at least ask yourself these questions. Are these supernatural glimpses of truth? Or are they manifestations of grief? Or something far more dangerous? Hope where none should exist? Because their visions, they saw something impossible, something that made Eleanor question everything she had been told about that fatal crash. As Eleanor struggled between grief and impossible hope, forces she couldn't imagine were moving in the shadows. The crash that took her husband's life had left loose ends, and dangerous people don't forgive loose ends. In Barcelona, Spain, someone was asking questions about missing assets and a missing enforcer. In Chicago, investigators were filing reports that didn't tell the whole story. And in Mississippi, a grieving widow was about to discover that her husband's secrets would follow him to the grave. The sister's supernatural abilities might be Eleanor's only protection against threats she didn't see coming. But the sister's mysterious visions raised the most dangerous questions of all. What if the man Eleanor loved, the man she thought she knew completely, had been living a double life that would now destroy everything she held dear? And what if the crash that supposedly killed him wasn't the end of the story? In a world where supernatural sisterhood meets deadly secrets, Eleanor Burrows is about to learn some of death's raise more questions than they answer. Eleanor's story, Book 2 of the Sisterhood Story, embodies when love meets deception, when grief battles hope, and when supernatural powers are the only defense against mortal dangers. Some secrets are worth dying for, some truths are worth killing for, and some sisters will risk anything and everything to protect what matters most. I sincerely hope you enjoy reading Eleanor's story. It has raised some serious questions as you go along. Let me know in the comments below what those questions are, and when we get through the end, to make sure all your questions were answered. The next episode we're going to get into, it will be episode 5, which will be about Luna. Book 3 in the Sisterhood series. The Sisterhood, Luna's Legacy, will take a deeper look into Luna and who she is and what she's capable of and what she learns that turns her entire world upside down. Remember, all 5 books, let me show you this again just so you have it, is Eleanor's book. And then there's all of them are available on Amazon and Kindle. And I did a bundle book, which puts them all together. And that's this one here. And in the bundle book, it's pretty thick, but it's all 5 of the books in here. So you can read one book at a time if you want, and they're all together. So the bundle book can be, the paperback version of it can still be bought on Amazon, but if you want a hardcover for it, you would purchase that on lulu.com. Now remember to leave a comment below if you have any questions, and don't forget to hit the like and ring the bell, because this way you can follow us as we go along. And just remember that the most dangerous enemy is the one you never see coming. I'm Kathy Houchins, and I look forward to next time. Goodbye.